Nate Dog here, and today we have another creepypasta. This one was recommended to me by the one and only horror crawler himself, and of which I would like to thank for supporting me on Patreon. So this one's for you, buddy. Ted the Caver. Alright. I don't have a lot of background on this. It's written by Ted Hedgeman, so, you know, Ted the Caver, Ted wrote it. So, it says that there will be some photos and stuff available, which I'll put up on the screen. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's see here. Caving Journal, 12/30/2000. B and I decided to get in one more caving trip before the new year, so we set our sights on the Mystery Cave. He stated prior to this that he's not going to name the actual cave or anything like that, and he's not going to give any names out, so he's going to be using aliases and such. So B, who knows who that is, that's just an alias. Sorry. Anyway, not a spectacular cave, but since neither of us had been caving in a while, it would be pretty nice to go to any cave. There was a bit of excitement to this trip. There was a small passage in a lower portion of the cave that I wanted to check out to see if it was possible to get past it. It had a small opening, but lots of air blowing out. Even though this was way too small to climb through, I had never checked to see what was inside the passage. We got our gear up and loaded and hit the road by 3 p.m. We got to the cave in great time since B likes to drive fast. We anchored from the usual tree and began to rappel into the cave. I went down first and got my gear together while B came down. As for reference to the small opening in the cave, there is a saying among cavers, if it blows it goes, meaning that if the passage has a good flow of air, it's probably worth investigating. After we explored all the usual passages, we climbed down to check out the hole. The hole is located deep in the cave, near the lowest part of the cave. It is on the side of a cave wall about 3 feet from the floor. To look inside the hole, I had to kneel down to duck under an overlapping rock. I used my backup mini-mag light and held it inside of the hole to see what I could see. I was excited by what I saw. The wall around the hole was about 3 to 5 inches thick. It led into a tight passage. The passage opened up a bit just inside the hole. It continued back about 10 to 12 feet in a small crawl space. After that, it seemed to open up, although how much we could not tell. This could be a virgin passage, which means obviously no one's passed through this route, but there could be a way into the passage from the other side. To even get to the crawl space, we would have to enlarge the opening. Currently, it was about the size of my fist. Once we get past the opening, we would have a tight crawl back to where it opened up. It would take some work, but we thought we could do it. We sat down for a few minutes to rest and contemplate our plan of attack. While we sat there in the darkness, we could hear the wind howling from the other side of the passage. It was low, eerie noise. We could also hear a low rumble from time to time. No big deal though. The cave is in the vicinity of a highway that has heavy trucks that drive on it. We figured that the rumble was the effects of the trucks resonating through the rocks. We determined that our best plan would be to haul a cordless drill into the cave and drill into the rock. Then we could take a bullpen and a small sledgehammer and break up the rock. It seemed pretty straightforward. We would widen the hole big enough to squeeze in and see what was on the other side. But the efforts to haul the equipment down to the hole would be a pain, but we'd hoped it would be worth it. I named the passage Floyd's Tomb, after Floyd Collins. It seemed to look like a tight spot where Floyd spent his last miserable days on Earth. Floyd Collins was a caver back in the 1900s. He got stuck in a tight crawl space and was unable to free himself. It is an amazing story that is detailed in a book called Trapped, the story of Floyd Collins. Calling our passage Floyd's tomb was not only a tribute to Floyd, but a commentary on the size of the passage. In retrospect, it's funny how simple I thought it was going to be. I figured a few hours of work and we would be in. Had I known how long it was going to take, I doubt I would have even begun the project. Had I known what I was going to experience in the cave, I never would have returned. We gathered up our gear and headed for the surface. Normally I couldn't care less if I ever came back into this cave. There was nothing special about it, but now I was psyched about getting back through. We hadn't even left the cave, and we were planning our return trip. January 27th through 28th, 2001. B and I were both excited to get back into the cave, and we got to work. I figured within about 4 hours of work, we could be in and see what was on the other side. We'd arranged to borrow a DeWalt cordless drill to bring with us. We also had a masonry bits to drill with, sledgehammers, 2 of them, to break up the rocks, bullpens to insert into the drill holes, and after a few other tools we ended up not using. Getting the tools down to the work site would prove to be a challenge. One of us would climb down the rope and stop at the ledge, or a good resting place. Then the other person would lower the tools. We kept repeating this route until we reached the bottom of our cave. Then we had to drag the tools to the hole. It took about an hour to finally get to work. B took the first turn at the hole. After an hour of exhausting work, we could tell that we were not going to get through this in one session. We kept trading off after we worked ourselves into a sweat. One would take a break and get some food and water while the other one worked. The routine went like this. To begin the work, we had to get down on our knees and do our best to avoid smacking our heads on the ceiling. Working in this awkward position, we would drill into the wall around the hole. That was difficult work. We really had to push on the drill, and it was still slow progress. Then we inserted the bullpen into the hole and hammered it onto a rock until it broke up. Then we would repeat the process. To give you an idea of how slow it went, the typical size of rock we would break off was about the size of a fingernail. If we broke off a large piece, about 1/3 the size of my palm, it was cause for a celebration. From time to time, for variety, we would just wail on the cold chisel with a 5-pound sledge. It was slow progress. The problem with the sledge was that we couldn't take a good swing because of the tight quarters. Even though we spent many hours and several trips working on the hole, we never did find a better technique for winding the hole. After a couple hours of hard work, we realized that our limiting factor was going to be our first battery had met an abrupt death. We had a secondary battery, so we swapped them out. The second battery lasted a little longer because we hammered and chiseled a little more often and a little longer each time. Finally, about 3 more hours of drudgery, the second battery died, and we called it a night. Whew. We could tell that we had done some work in the cave, but it was not much. For the first time since we got in the cave, we sat back and both took a break. It was nice to check the results of our hard work. Then we noticed the howling again. It just seemed to be a little bit louder than the last time we were there. We just figured the wind was blowing a little stronger outside. What we could not figure out was the rumbling. It too seemed to be louder and more frequent. This time we could not attribute the noises to trucks. The road that the trucks drove on was not very busy to begin with, and at that time of night it should be dead, yet the rumbling continued. It seemed to be coming from deep within the passage. B said he would ask some veteran cavers what could be causing the noise. We didn't spend a long time admiring our work. We still had to haul the gear up and out of the cave. Actually, we left some of it in the cave. It was still difficult work. What made it worse is that we were both exhausted. Our original plan was to be done with this cave and hit a couple of other caves in the area the next day. Instead, we decided to go back and crash at a nearby motel, charged up the drill batteries, and go back to the mystery cave. My journal goes on at length about the night. After we left the cave, we got a room. Dinner was excellent. I didn't sleep that good despite the fact I was exhausted. We both slept in, so we got a late start back to the cave. The second day of working, the cave went about the same as the first. We worked until both batteries were dead again. We were still not even close to getting through. The howling and rumbling continued, just like in the day before. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and end it there on that. This creepypasta is a pretty long one, so I'm gonna be doing it in bits and pieces. So that's gonna be the first bit. So far, I mean, it sounds very interesting. Not really sure. I don't know much about caving myself, what the howling or rumbling could be about. Wind would definitely make sense for the howling, but the rumbling beats me. I'm not a caver, so I don't really know. Anyway, if you guys like it, you know, like and follow for more, I'll be pushing out this creepypasta in a decently mannered time. So thank you guys for watching, and like and follow for more. And again, thank you Horror Crawler for joining on my Patreon, and for recommending this creepypasta. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next video.